What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Halftime Snacks podcast. This show features short interviews that you can listen during the halftime of your favorite sports events. Every Tuesday, I host fun conversations with talented people in the sports industry where we'll learn from their stories, knowledge, and experiences. So go grab your favorite snack and come snack with us. Are you ready? Let's go! Joining today's halftime snack is a Brazilian man who's leading one of the most exciting digital initiatives in the sports industry. Besides being a former professional rock climber and a Harvard alumni, his background is packed with experiences in coding, sales, marketing, project, and product management. He is the CEO and co-founder of Horizon, a company that uses technology to help sports companies track, value, and monetize their digital media. This is about to be a huge lesson in strategy, business development, risk management, and more. Ladies and gentlemen, Pedro Mestriner.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Welcome to the show, Pedro. How are you, man?
Oh, good. Oh, good. Heat wave in Spain today. So we're having 35-degree here, which is 37 almost, I don't know, 90 something Fahrenheit. For those ones, it's really hot. Summer is
Nice.
coming.
So turn up the AC, and everybody else can turn up the volume because this halftime snack is about to be massive. Man, I want to kick it off with an icebreaker, and I want to ask you this very random question, but I want to know, what is your second favorite animal?
Oh, that's a good one. I think cheetah, definitely.
A cheetah is your second favorite animal.
Second one, yeah.
And what's the number one?
The number one is still the lion.
Okay, okay.
It's still the lion.
Is there any reason why cheetah is your second favorite?
Yeah, when I went to Africa, actually, it's a long story to make short, but mine is something. I finished university and went to Africa for 3 months to climb, and we're gonna talk more about this. And I saw doing the safaris, but in a very more backpacker way. And I saw that animal running, and my background is athletics, is running and jumping. And I said, no, I'm in the wrong place. These animals are just fantastic the way they move. And I literally got in love with the cheetah, and that was the reason. I said, wow, that's impressive. And the lion, since I was a kid, typical, is the animal who managed the whole savannah area and
King in
more
the
stories.
jungle, huh?
King of the jungle, yeah, that's right. And the cheetah I was really impressed with the way they move and the speed, the whole anatomy of the way they do it. It's fantastic. Yeah, I got in love with that, and since there, I still have talk about cheetah all the time.
That's great, man. And I want to just jump straight right in. You mentioned rock climbing. It's a very key element of your background. You've been doing it for professionally for a while. So I want to know exactly how did you get into it. It's such a unique, let's call it profession or devotion or vocation. So how did you exactly get into it? And I also want to ask you, man, and this is because I don't know if you watched the documentary Free Solo from
Yes.
about Alex Honnold, who was like the first guy to free solo El Capitan in Yosemite, and man, I saw, and it was like crazy, like risk, like in any second you could basically just fall and die, and it's like crazy. So I want to know how it really shaped your perception of risk. How'd you get into rock climbing? And just tell us, if you want, the story and that element of how you now perceive risk due to rock climbing.
No, that's a great one. Well, thank you for the question. Basically, I mean, being a Brazilian guy, it's kind of tough to say that I'm a rock climber or a mountaineer, because people associate it to other sports, But I think I was lucky enough, even though I was born in São Paulo, I was lucky enough to, my family have a country house outside of São Paulo that was kind of the exploration paradise. We have the jungle around, we have the rivers, we have the lakes. So I spent my childhood basically, doing kind of explorations as a kid. I was the little Rambo of the family, all the time doing these kind of things. And climbing, actually, when I was 12, around 12, I saw a TV show, documentary or something about people climbing El Capitan, precisely. That I said that changed my, view of climbing. So I became I want to be a climber. That was the thing. There was nothing else. Climbing is not about medals in Olympics, as you know, is more about traveling, exploring, and there's a few other elements with the nature. And I started building actually my own crampons, and my dad was helping. I was always climbing hills, not mountain rocks, but in Brazil, I did my own PLA and climbing trees. I was kind of, young thing. But then, of course, came the teenager area, being Brazil, that you have no rock climbing there, basically in São Paulo area. I know if you're in Rio for sure. And I moved to other sports. So my base life is always sports. I've been running athletics. I was a long jump as well. And then because of the jumping, I was called to play volleyball as a setter for an interesting team called Palmeiras in Brazil. So I was a setter until I was 17. That was my sport background, basically, collectible team. But for a 5'7" guy, there's no real future being a setter in Brazil for the size of I was. No, so basically, I was that time working as a trainee, to Pfizer pharmaceutical company, and a guy literally knew that I was all into sports. Say, hey, I know some people that are climbing, and that ignited the passion that I had again, back when I was young, and completely changed my whole perspective of life. I keep that dream to climb El Capitan, which ended up realizing. I'm going to probably explain about the movie as well and what I have done in that route with ropes. Always, that's the difference. So that was, basically family exposure to nature. Fishing with my dads around the Amazon area. So that's what a lot of things involving not climbing, but it's always being exposed. So for the other question about risk, sometimes people think climb is about, it's extremely risky, but I think that is not totally true. The main point of climbing is first training. You train, in the case of Free Solo of the movie, you train your whole life to do one thing, risk or not. So basically you're spending years and years dedicating to that. So the risk assessment is done pretty wide. And climb is about analysis as well and mental fitness. It's about grit. There's a few elements that, of course, you still cannot control, basically, the avalanche or rock falls, but everything that you control, you really prepare. So every time we go to expedition to climb a place, you prepare a lot on this. So there's no improvisation at all on climbing. And if you, as you saw the movie, the guy spent, Alex spent, I think, 8 years or 9 years just to do that climb, which is still, of course, in that case, there is a lot of risk on that. But, the guy did a huge training for that. And that's pretty much the climbing is risk assessment is done in a very, very deep level.
That's very interesting because since you started Horizon and it's a technology company, I guess that up to a certain point as a founder, you can assess the risk of a company, but like you can know more or less how what's the probability that it might fail, what is the probability that it might be successful, but only to a certain degree. There's also a little bit of improvisation and pivoting along the way. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but I want to ask you if there's any one or two similarities that you found in building technology companies and climbing huge rocks. Is there anything that you can say about? What I liked a lot was about, like, for instance, the mental fitness element. So maybe that's one. I wonder if there's one or two others that you can think about that are very similar between both practices, even though they're really different.
No, 100% related. I think the first one is that climbing and business mistakes are not allowed in a certain way. So big mistakes, you are not allowed. In case of climbing, either you kill your partner, you kill yourself, or you kill the whole team. So that's the thing. So big mistakes are not allowed. So that's lesson number one. I think that number two is that climbing is not about money. You don't see a climbing talking about, making money. This is different from other sports. Climbing is about passion, a mission, or legacy, or the dreams you want to make true. That is period. And this is pretty much about setting up a company. If you think, and the typical, I want to set up a company to be rich, you start failing. It's a big problem, I think that's the main thing that probably is not, as we said, also about the grit. Climbing is a sport that you have to fail a lot to keep growing and to keep climbing. There's no way you climb something, you say, I'm not falling. The only way to grow into climbing, especially sport climbing, is that you fall and you learn what you mistake, and you do again, and you do again until you execute. So pretty much what you do as an entrepreneur, basically, as a company. The only thing is that with the time and experience in the years following, literally you avoid a lot of mistakes that you know that you have already done. And that's the similarity being, when you are entrepreneur, when you are 20 or when you are 45. You have an experience that you have done a few things, you have done a lot of mistakes, and the rule is try to make new mistakes, not the other ones that you already know. No?
Wow, that's a fascinating way of looking at it, Pedro. I'm actually thinking about one extra thing, and I want to share it with you because I think it's very very interesting. In rock climbing, as you mentioned, has a certain degree of anti-fragility or margin for error that is very very small. That you can't really do errors while you're climbing rocks, but you can do errors while you're at the boulder gym.
Oh yeah,
Trying, in the
correct.
gym, you can fall there. So that could be considered, as a place where you can fail. So taking that into business, I would say that in a startup, and especially in tech companies, try to find your boulder gym. The place where you can fail, where it's not gonna really affect you or your business, and then go out and in the business and execute perfectly, because there's no room for error over
Correct.
there. So I guess that the analogy of just find your boulder gym
Yep.
in business, that's a nice
No,
way
no,
to putting it.
absolutely. I like this. Actually, the Boulder Gym is probably the A/B tests we are doing,
Right.
and then you go to market. Actually, when you go climb, basically, that you say, no, I cannot make mistakes, or at least big mistakes you cannot make. You cannot forget your water when you go climb. That's a huge thing. So I think that's a great analogy. I really like that, the boulder and when you train, and it's precisely this. In our case, it's probably the A/B test we're constantly doing until we have kind of a base to say, okay, this is, let's go for it.
Yeah, yeah, big one, man. I loved it. Thank you for sharing that. Um, Man, your background is very interesting. Looking at it, you've been in Harvard, you've been in Pfizer, you worked with Barcelona, the team. So I want to know if there are any lessons from those highlights of your background that make you perfect. There's this concept that Naval calls founder product market fit. So what makes you the perfect founder product market fit for you in Horizon, thanks to the highlights of your background?
Oh, that's a good one. I'll try to make it simple. I think first one is for the companies I was working is first is always thinking global and big. There's no room here to think small. That's ambitions. Of course, knowing where you're stepping in, but you need to go big and go international. In our case, in our world today, is go international. Horizon is a company that is international from day one. Actually, in Spain, we have 2 clients. 95% of the clients are out. I mean, that was the initial thing. You need to go out. I think the second one is company culture. Company culture, definitely. That is important. I work for Hitachi, a Japanese company. That I would say that definitely was, if not the best experience I had in my life. I had a very tough boss, the president of the consumer division, Sekiyama-san, which is still was my mentor. I would say he was the president of the division. He hired me when he knew that I have no experience in the industry, but I have the skills. Actually, I went to the interview showing him a Japanese magazine called Gakujin that I was featured as a climber. And they were saying that, this guy is very, whatever, gritty, and he was doing this, captain, this kind of stuff. And then they hired me. I thought, well, probably it's because of the magazine or something. Anyway, I have no experience at all on consumer, especially electronics. And he was really tough with me for the first 2 years. Literally, the Japanese culture in the company was like, it's not about the pressure, it's about the standard. You need to deliver always at 100% minimum. So 99% is not an option. There's no option for that. And the way they execute things, and also the data, it's always oriented with data. You always start a meeting with the Japanese with a billboard and some numbers and driving the past to it to see what is the future. So, a few years back, just to conclude that, when he, finished and go back to Japan as a president, he said, hey, I was happy that, I pressured you and you didn't quit. I like that. And so the magazine was telling the truth. So he joked, and we're still good colleagues. He's retired in Japan now. And I'll definitely say that was one of the things is about company culture, understanding why they have this. And I think the third one, the last one, is definitely scalability and delivery. I know my experience previous on Let Go. Let Go is one of the first Spanish unicorns. Marketplace purely is like the first C2C marketplace in US, huge one. It was a Spanish company, started with one of my best friends, Jordi here. They did something that I didn't live it directly. Working in startups, I did as well, but then in corporates, the way to take a company from 0 to 100 in like 24 months, what I did is I was really impressed when I went to that environment, and the speed, which is basically nothing care about delivery. It's execution, execution, execution. There was nothing else about delivering. So for them, the mentality, and we apply a little bit here in Horizon, as tomorrow is not a viable option, basically. It's always delivery. So I think that was the missing part for me before we decided to say, okay, jumping into our own process. Is having this scalability and the delivery mentality that sometimes incorporates, they have good things, but as you know, sometimes there is low, and there's other politics involved. In startups, you need to execute every single hour. There's no room for tomorrow, basically.
Wow, that's super fascinating. I wonder what's the how it started with this Horizon solution. What was the original idea, and in what ways has it pivoted? Has it shifted along the way? It has a little bit less than 2 years right now.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
if you just can walk us through the roadmap of how the product came into fruition, and then how it changed it, and until what it is today.
No, yeah, actually, Horizon started of one of my failures in professional life. When I worked as a consultant, to FC Barcelona, it was a disaster. Actually, I was hired to, try to help them to build the digital assets team to sell digital only, and it was a huge disaster. We couldn't. The organization was not ready, which is fine. This was a few years back in time, but then the market still not ready yet. But the main point was the pricing. How you measure, how you really have a pricing to your digital assets. So with that in mind, I was like running around and thinking and saying, that's, something we need to do this. And then back into sports, we were called by the Volleyball Federation actually a couple of years ago, a little bit more, to consult them to advise on the asset valuation on digital. And we said, no, again, the problem for FC Barcelona, nothing changing in the industry. So with Jose David, the co-founder, with a good friend, specialized on product and gaming, this guy who did a lot of good stuff on the industry, we decided, what, now is the timing. So then we decided, we put a plan actually on the paper with kind of a funny story. We drove from Barcelona to Lausanne to deliver the project. I was sick at that time, I have a ear infection or something. I could not take a plane. So he came here and said, no, let's drive. It's an 8-hour drive from Barcelona to Lausanne, 8-9 hours. So that trip was supposed to 8 hours. We took 3 days to arrive in Lausanne because we drove in my old California van that I still have as a climber. And we stopped every 2 hours to paint and draw and said, that is happening. And when we arrive in Lausanne, we have Horizon roadmap for 3 years in the paper. When we came back, we decided to execute that. That's less than 2 years, as you said. And we hired the first part-time coder with the resource we have. And then we decided the approach to this would be, we need to have a good client, or at least a good right holder that we can plug in and basically understand, of course, what they do, because that's the way to build, in our case, a product that serves for the market base, not because we thought it would be good. And we knocked a few doors. We ended up talking to Real Madrid, which is a good client to have. And those guys saw the vision, they saw the product, and they said, we want it. And again, luck and preparation came together. They decided to, embed, let's say, the solution in the organization, not only as a software, but how to change the way they're selling, the way they're approaching their partners. And so far, I would say that we haven't pivoted anything. Of course, we have deprioritized a few things that we thought would be cool features for the product. In the end, they are in the bottom of the list. And other things, because of the group of properties we have, the clients, they are asking more. So we have like TikTok, for example. That's something that a year and a half ago was like, yeah, maybe could be something cool. Now is a must-have for any sport property. So those kind of priorities change, but the roadmap haven't changed. We still have the 3-year plan. and we are purely executing that within this. Of course, COVID came in, shaked a few things, and unfortunately, considering it's a disgraceful things happening, but in terms of business for us, it really accelerated everything. COVID did a job, let's say, of understanding the rights holders, mainly the sport entertainment industry, that they need to go digital, yes or yes. There's not building a website or an app anymore. You need to look this carefully because that is where your future revenues are coming in.
Very interesting. But I wonder if you're all the time you're executing, how are you exactly building organizational culture? If it's not always execute, like how exactly do you take the time, or what strategies have you been using, or like what are your thoughts about building up the culture of Horizon in if you're always like
Yeah.
execute, like what's the plan?
No, I think the thing is the reason Horizon is having this huge growth in the last 12 months is basically because of the team. The product itself is very good, I have to say, of course, but the team is the key element for this. And the reason of the team is the culture we're trying to put here. It's very simple. There's no need to go to any super business school or buy 20 books. It's very simple. It's about ownership. Ownership, basically, it doesn't matter if the key account manager is the owner of the delivering. It's his call. If he made a mistake, just fix it, move on, shake and go. So it's ownership. That's about ownership comes with trust. So it's a base of every single thing we're doing in life, which is a very much associated to the climbing thing. In the end, when you climb with someone, that's kind of umbilical cord you have. If you're thinking that if you fall, your partner will not catch you, you cannot climb at your 100%. So that's the trust. If you trust your partner or someone who's, in the case of climbing, taking care of you, things will go better. You can execute at 100%. And I think the third point is basically about the team. We are not a family here. We are a team, and with that, basically people are accountable for what they are doing, which is related to the ownership, and we treat them as adults from this. With this is about delivery. So they figure out the best thing. Basically, our job here is to put them together to make sure this culture exists of ownership, trust, and team execution, basically, and treat people as adults. I think that's the best thing. If we have kind of a mentality that everyone who's jumping on board is like, if we have an option to deliver a very good product, or we have an option to deliver a bad product, or we have an option to deliver okay products. For us, the okay is already a bad product. So there's no option on this, and that is the base from the technical side, for the business side, for administrative side, for the financial people, for everyone. And this is embedding, because in the end it's about the climbing. Going back to the climbing again, is you need to try to deliver at least 100%. Sometimes it's not about motivation. We have good days or bad days, like any startup company. But if you have the discipline, it overcome all the motivation issues. It's like when you go training. As an athlete, some days, a lot of days, you wake up, you say, "What I'm doing this?" It's like 6 in the morning, it's raining or cold. I don't want to go out. I don't want to travel. But then comes the discipline, and that's pretty much the base of everything. Because in our case, if we really want to be the best guys here, we need to do things that other people are not willing to do. And there's it's life thing, basically. We're not inventing the wheel here or using a nice quotes around, but that's the way to do anything you want in life.
And what is your vision for Horizon in the, let's say, down the horizon, let's say,
Yeah.
10 years?
Yeah, well, that's a good one. I mean, for a techie company, when you look like, 10 years is always a tough question. But in terms of vision, of course, not only the product development thing, but also the industry is changing so fast that even for us, without this execution mind, it's even changing faster than we expected, which is a great sign. So in terms of vision for us, of course, expansion of the company is always a thing, and we have new products along the roadmap delivering. But the mentality here is also to build a solid business. That is very important. We are like sports, of course, trying to be very precise on the way we deliver and deploy every single dollar we have. So that mentality, I know that sometimes on the on the tech side, and especially entrepreneurship, there's a lot of money available. So like, have a check of $10 million and you start go crazy, you lose focus. So we don't raise more money than we don't need, because that's dangerous in some aspect, especially in our stage, which is a year-old company operational size. You can lose the focus and start to play around with other things that is not focused. No? Our focus it's basically very simple: deliver the best product for the clients we have. That is the thing. So with that mentality, we need to keep focus on this. So yes, solid business, solid team, and keep adding layers, of course, now in terms of growth. But long term, if you think what you want to do with this company, well, we're gonna adapt for the market needs, definitely, and we're gonna adapt for the company needs as well. And I think that's important, not only, but the dream is, as a climber and as a dreamer, is basically try to take that dream of 5 years. And if you can do a company, some people say, I want to take this IPO or whatever. We're not looking into that too much, to be honest. We have that back in the mind, as a company, but because the focus is, again, execution and delivery, we try to take all this stuff out of the mind and, okay, step by step. We haven't done literally anything. It's great, good growth, good list of clients, but we need to keep moving step by step. Very solid things, and that's pretty much the approach.
Man, it's so interesting to see how you decode things coming from a climbing and rock climbing background. Man, you literally think about like what's the next step and what's the like one step by step. So it's fascinating to hear you describe that in business, Pedro. Thank you so much for sharing. Man, it has been such a pleasure hosting you on the show. Time has gone so fast, and I can't go without asking you a last and personal question. Yep. And man, I was thinking, okay, so this guy has a different perception of risk. He's been in a couple of situations where he's defying certain laws of physics and reality. So I wonder, what is this guy's biggest fear? So what would you say is your biggest fear, Pedro?
For me, it's to stop. It's ever thinking on stopping and not keep evolving all the time. Life in the end is about learning process. It doesn't matter now if it's climbing, if it's business or whatever. And my biggest fear is that, not losing, let's say, this appetite for keep exploring since I was a kid, And the rest of the things are completely overcome, because in the end, it's about life as well. There's a lot of obstacles all the time that you need to either surround or climb on top of it to go to the other side. But I mean, the beauty of this is that, we haven't seen, I think, everything. There's always things that you can learn about the world or yourself or a company or the market. So, our time is very limited here. So the best thing is, let's not waste it and keep learning, keep not stopping everything that you're doing, whatever, if it's climbing, if it's entrepreneurship, if it's fundraising, if you're deploying capital, whatever, is putting the passion on this. I think, and as soon as we continue to do this, so the fear is not stopping. And I hope that continue this until the last day I have.
Ah, man, that's an amazing conclusion and an amazing way of closing out this episode. Pedro, I want to thank you so much for your time, your insights, and your kindness. Man, it has been an awesome halftime snack. I've enjoyed every piece of it, and wow, I'm so impressed of everything that you just told us, man. I can't wait to host you again in the show in the future, man. But for now, thank you so much for coming to the halftime snacks. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy learning about the business and technology behind sports, make sure you subscribe to the Sports Tech Biz newsletter. I'll leave the link in the show notes. See you all next week. Bye-bye.